Yes, indeed, everybody. Welcome to the Psychic Funhouse, your favorite location and destination for spiritual rejuvenation. I am your co-host, Mr. Lawrence A. Birch, and I'm joined tonight, thank goodness, by my lovely and definitely smarter co-host, the amazing, the one of a kind. That would be Miss Adrienne Stratton. So, quiet. Be very
Hey,
quiet.
hi Lawrence.
Hey,
Hi
Adrienne.
everyone.
Yeah.
Happy
Glad you're in.
Friday.
Happy Friday indeed. Yes. Yes, indeed. We're glad you're here, and we're glad to be here for another wonderful show for the week. So yay.
Absolutely.
Yes, the Raven has entered the building. Um, so Adrian, what's happening in your part of the world? What uh, what kind of events are going on, and what's your contact info for people?
Yeah, I needed to let everyone know that the holistic fair that I do monthly in Laguna Woods is actually tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
Yes, it's tomorrow. It's the OC Heart Space Holistic Fair held in Laguna Woods. It's from 11 a.m. until 5 p.m. I'll be there. I'm doing readings, tarot card, energy, mediumship readings. And there'll be a lot of different people there. There's free classes on a variety of different topics. And it's usually a really great time. So, I hope that you check it out. I know there's a website. And yeah, so that's what I got going on for right now. And my contact information, one of the best ways to access my information actually is through my website, which is ravenmessages.com. You can also, so there's information there about my fees and my services. You can also check out my business page on Facebook, which is the same, Raven Messages. And check out my jewelry page too. That's new. And that's it. How about you, Lawrence? What do you got going on? And how do people find you if they want to book a session?
Yeah. What's happening up here? Well, so I just put in an application to teach a part two to my herbal class that I teach through the local community college every term. So if that gets accepted, I'll have 11 full weeks of herbalism and related subjects that I'll be offering in person. So if you're in the Pacific Northwest in my area, which is Corvallis, that could be something fun for you to sign up for. I'll also be teaching that same class, the introductory part one class this summer, beginning at towards the end of June. So we'll have that up on my website.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Meanwhile,
Sounds great.
yeah. It's been a well received class. It's something I taught about starting about 15 years ago for a few years, and then when I started commuting back and forth between here in California, when I relocated down there, I just had too much of a crazy schedule to offer it, so I didn't teach it for a number of years, but it's back
Hmm,
and better than ever. So that's good. Of
wonderful.
course, I'll also be teaching different classes over the summer. Once I get that figured out in my schedule, I'll let people know and I'll have that posted. Um, so different ways to contact me if you'd like to avail yourself of my psychic or shamanic, tarot, or herbal services. You can take a look at my website, which is givingtreefarm.com. My Facebook page is Giving Tree Farm Herb Company. And my phone number for calling or texting Monday through Friday is 541 344 7534. And my email is givingtree@earthlink.net. So all sorts of options for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very
Perfect.
cool.
Yeah. So I thought today we'd have a discussion about how to become a psychic. Last week we talked about how to develop or add to your spiritual practice, and it turns out that some of the same activities you can do to engage yourself spiritually are also helpful if you're thinking about becoming a psychic. So I thought that might be an interesting discussion for us to have and for our audience members to participate
Hmm.
with us about. So, um, so maybe the first place to start off would be about sharing our own journey with our um, connection to spirit and how that happened for us. I think you may have talked about that a little bit before, Adrienne, but um, I think you mentioned that you had kind of a spiritual experience when you were a little tyke, and it was discounted pretty heavily by your parents. So that kind of put the kibosh on things for you until you were older. Is that right? Am I remembering right?
Yeah, that's very true. It's very
Mm-hmm.
true. That
Mm-hmm.
my first real contact with a spiritual entity, what happened when I was 6, and
Mm-hmm.
what I have found is that's not really uncommon. That many people have an experience when they're young, when they're very young, and it makes sense, really. When you're younger, um, your things are less complicated, and so I think that the tendency is to be a little bit more open. So, and that
Mm-hmm.
changes sometimes as we as we grow old or older, anyhow. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I don't know, how about you, Lawrence? What was your first experience like? I think you've shared it also, but I can't recall for some reason right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Trying to think back onto my very, very, very first spiritual experience. Um, I don't know. I'd have to think about it to come up with my origin story. But I was pretty precocious as a child, and I would often say and do things that were, um, you know, clear to my family that I was perceiving things differently than they were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one time when I was in high school, my mom and I had just gone to our favorite bagel shop to get some sandwiches for lunch, and we were pulling out of the parking lot. This was in Pacific Grove, California, which is near
Oh
Monterey,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I grew
I
up there.
love Pacific Grove.
Yeah, it's a cute little town.
Yeah.
I lived there for about not quite 10 years. Um, Went to high school there. Anyway, we had just started to pull out of the driveway onto traffic onto, I think it was Del Monte Boulevard, which is a long sloping road that starts way up in the hill and
Yeah.
goes all the way down to the center of town, so it's on an incline. Anyway, we were just about to pull into traffic. She was driving, and there was this big bang uh, that came kind of from up above us, farther up the road. And my mom was like, "What was that?" And I said, without any hesitation, I said, "Somebody's just been killed in an accident." It just came out of me. And and what was odd is we looked we looked up the road, and coming down the gutter was all this fluid, and it had been dry. It hadn't rained in days, and it was just all this fluid coming down. And what we realized later, that was the radiator that had been ruptured in this accident. And this pretty well known and respected football coach, I think it was Carmel, maybe Carmel High School or somewhere over there, had tried to negotiate a turn, and somebody had T-boned him and killed him.
Ah,
And when we drove by, we could see, his body was slumped over.
oh,
And he wasn't looking too good, neither with his car. So, um, but yeah, I've had different things happen
yeah.
like that, you know, um, throughout my experience. But I didn't, I didn't really have anybody shut me down when I would say things. You know, both my grandmothers were pretty instrumental in being supportive of me uh, for just about anything. I could as long as it wasn't going to harm me or somebody else, they would pretty much 100% sign up for it. So I could always count on them to be supportive of whatever
Hmm.
whatever I was thinking or seeing or doing. That they were really loving and kind and really great resources for me, as were other people in my family. So you know, and it, yeah, my parents came from a scientific background. They were both going to be doctors, and they went to Willamette University. That's where they met, and that actually I was born while they were still in school. They were undergraduate juniors, so they got started early on having a family, and they were biology majors. And then when they both graduated, and my mom's grades were almost perfect. My dad's weren't as good. They were good, but not as good. And they started applying to medical school,
Hmm.
different medical schools, as a married couple. Uh, they would look at my dad's grade and say, well, his grades aren't as good as they should be. And we don't take married women because you're just going to have babies. And they really would say that literally to her when she tried to apply. And so she didn't get into medical school because of me, and also because they decided that my dad wasn't good enough. So what
Jeez.
ended yeah, I know what
Oh,
ended up happening. I know
oh.
what ended up happening is my mom got talked into going to dental school down in San Francisco, which was 4 years of torture for her, and she didn't like being a dentist, so she only practiced for about 10 years and then dropped that. But my dad, my mom had some back trouble, and so she went to uh, some chiropractors and then was really helped by that. And my dad went, oh, well, maybe I'll be a chiropractor. So that's what he did. He went into chiropractic and overall did really pretty well with that. And but it was interesting. My mom's I would say a religiously observant person. She's gone to Presbyterian church for a number of years, doesn't anymore, but she used to. And so she's open spiritually. And my dad, not really a churchy person, but he's done a lot of different spiritual explorations, I guess is what I'd call them.
Mhm.
So when I, expressed an interest in spirituality, which for me ended up crystallizing into shamanism, both of them were pretty open and supportive about that. So that was fortunate.
Yeah,
Um,
I
so
love
yeah.
that.
Hmm.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know, because a lot of people, they have a family they can sometimes be very condemnatory of any kind of uh, religious or spiritual exploration that's outside of their belief system. And you know, um, there's a lot of Christian traditions that are very, 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 very uh, unsupportive, is I think the mildest term of spirituality that you and I practice. either
Mm-hmm.
by, making reference to it in the Bible, or just because, they've been told, anything that isn't doctrine is of the devil, and, that kind
Right.
of thing. Which I've had those conversations before with people,
Mm-hmm.
who've
Mm-hmm.
come at me with that. So that's always fun to interact
Yeah.
with those folks. Um, you know, but if you are somebody who, is developing a connection to spirit, and further you feel like maybe there are some gifts that you have that you want to develop, there are almost innumerable ways to really practice your craft, whatever it ends up being. You know, I mean, I have friends, I'm sure you do too, who are psychics, and they are also practicing Christians, and they call their guides angels, and so they work with angels, and sometimes they're accepted by other Christians, and sometimes that's not okay either, and
Mm-hmm.
but it's interesting because if you look at the Bible, there are dozens of accounts of people having visions,
Yeah.
and having different things happen to them, and miracles and all sorts of stuff. But if you're not having that happen within a certain acceptable parameter, then you're not, well, then you're not acceptable, I guess. So,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well, society has been changing in so many ways. I mean, my God, the horror stories about women being burned as witches um, really did happen. That is true, and that happened here in the U.S. Um, so we've come a long way from there. Um, I mean, we still have like lots of issues, but nevertheless, and so the point that I was going to make was that I think that if a person thinks that maybe they might be, they could be, or they had experiences, but they never got really clear on just exactly what that was. Well, what was it? What really happened there? Then I think it's important to start, finding some community, finding someone um, to talk to that can help you in that process of opening up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mentioned witches and burning. I have a story about that. I think I've told it before, but it's probably worth bringing up on this topic. Um, Several years ago, I had a girlfriend, and she had really pretty long red hair, like down to her waist, and she'd had it long for a while, and she decided it was time to cut it off as part of a ritual
Hmm.
and let it go. And so she braided it up and then cut it right at the back of her neck, so it was really pretty short. And part of the ritual that she came up with was she was going to burn the hair
Mm.
that she cut
Mm.
off to kind of erase some past, and so she could renew herself and start over, that kind of a thing. So she had this fire going, and she kept trying to get her hair to light, and it wouldn't light on fire. It wouldn't burn. It wouldn't burn. I don't know if she ever really got it to burn. Maybe it smoldered, or maybe eventually she was able to. But it was really odd because fire was going and there were flames, but it wouldn't. It just wouldn't burn. So um, she and I were hanging out in the travel trailer that I lived in at the time, and kind of out of the middle of nowhere, we both had this spontaneous past life experience come up, and we hadn't been trying for it. but we were definitely psychically connected. I mean, at one point we had a lucid dream that we both were awake in, where we were walking on the land on the property that we lived, and I was holding her hand and we were going up a hill, and I saw the full moon, and I let go of her hand and I flew up to the moon for a while, and then came back down. And then after we woke up that morning, we both were like, "Oh my God, we shared a dream." That was really interesting.
Yeah.
So we definitely had, you know, probably been connected in times before, not just that one relationship. So anyway, in this spontaneous past life vision that we both shared at the same time, we kind of were narrating it, as it was going on. I was in this crowd of people, and it felt like, it was like medieval times, hundreds of years ago, and I was a little kid. I think it was a boy, and I was looking up, and there was a scaffolding that was, head height in front of me, and these soldiers came along, and they had a prisoner with them, and I realized it was my girlfriend, but
Mm.
in that time frame, she was my mother, and I was her son, and she had her hands bound behind her back, and they brought her up, and they had all this kindling around, and they were going to burn her because she was a witch, and that's what they did. They tied her to this pole, and they lit the thing on fire with torches, and then everybody around, because it was an event, and we're all like, yay, they're burning the witch, and that was my mom that was going up in flames right in front
Um,
of me. It was horrible. And she remembered it, the whole thing, what was happening, and I was there. I mean, it was, we were both narrating this thing as it was playing out for us again in front of us, and it was really intensely powerful. Just like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
um, these things actually happen to people. So,
Yeah. It is. That's extremely intense, and yeah, it's not only intense, but what an incredible thing to share with another person. I mean, as horrific as that experience was in that regard of being burned, and you being there and watching it and having full memory of it, and at the same time, it's just unbelievable. What an amazing experience to have with another person. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, after sharing that, it made a lot more sense to her that why it was so difficult to get her hair to burn. It was almost like, the element of fire didn't want to
Hmm.
hurt her or injure her again in any
Yeah.
way. Interesting, but yeah,
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
yeah. And you were mentioning community, right? That it's really important to have community when you decide to take on psychic work, and I
Mm-hmm.
would definitely, agree with that.
Yeah.
Um, you know, this isn't something you can do alone.
Right.
Particularly if you're going to start, becoming a professional psychic, you're going to need to, develop your skills, and also have people that practice the same or similar, um, psychic techniques that you do
Mm-hmm.
to consult with. When you have questions about things, or a challenging client, or you want to find out how to develop different things or go in different directions. Your peers are really, really going to be beneficial
Sure.
when those situations and questions come up for you. So, I think the other thing, kind of as started in the beginning, is to recognize that, um, you may have some psychic abilities, and um, they're worth developing. In some
Mm-hmm.
in some indigenous cultures, when you're given gift of you know, psychic abilities or knowing things, spirits come to you and is starting to give you insights. If you don't develop those gifts, then a lot of those cultures will say, well, bad things are going to happen, maybe to you, but maybe even to the rest of the people in your community if you don't agree to open up to these things. And there are anecdotal tales if you look in historical literature from different indigenous people of people having these gifts and being really afraid of them or not wanting them or turning away from them, and then they crazy events start to happen around them, or they actually get injured, and sometimes in some cases they even expire, they die. Spirit says, okay, well, we're going to take you back,
Yeah.
the spirit world. So I think some people's experiences can be very intense or dramatic before they really get a sense of what's going on, and so they can you might feel like you're losing your mind, or things are happening out of your control, or you feel disturbed or upset when visions show up that are more intense than you know how to process or deal with.
Mhm.
um, and it's not a bad idea to get yourself checked out psychologically, and just if that's the route you want to go first, and just cover all the bases, make sure you're not you don't have schizophrenia, or you don't have a brain tumor or something like that. um, but after having done that, and maybe still coming away with questions, that's when you are probably going to want to seek out some form of teaching or a mentorship, or somebody who can guide you to develop what's emerging within you, and somebody who you respect or you've heard about, that you trust, that also acknowledges what's going on with you, and believes your story, basically, and doesn't try to deny it or fit it into some kind of funnel that it doesn't really belong in, that honors your individuality, and how to develop that personally, not just cookie cutter stamp you into some kind of prefabricated process, but that really works with you to become the best psychic, or what have you, that you
Mhm.
can. So you know
Yeah.
I think people can be in denial about things for a while,
Hmm.
particularly if like you were talking about, they come from a background that's not too keen on these things in the first place.
Right.
um, so
Yeah. Well, it's very true. And, you know, I was thinking as you were talking, you know, the other thing is that people access their gifts, if you will, differently often. Uh, there's a strong, like, correlation, if you will, between how you access spiritual realms and your senses. So, for example, just for example, we talk a lot. People sometimes are familiar with, what's called like a third eye,
mhm.
and uh, and so some people can access the information, being able to see things. Some people hear things. Some people just feel things. Some people access information and they don't know how they know, but they just know. And then there are actually even some people that smell things. And so it's again, this is why I think it's important to Find somebody that you can talk to and say, hey, um, it drives me crazy that I seem to know things, but I don't know how. I don't know how I know that. Or, why do I know things, but I can't really tell you where it comes from. And what you'll learn is that, we have what we call clairs. And these clairs, as like in clairvoyant, for example, the ability to see, um, uh, exist. And once you find really how you're accessing information, then that's, one of the things that you want to begin to develop. And I myself, I am clairvoyant, which means that I see. And, and that's probably one of my stronger clairs, but I'm also what they call claircognizant. And that means that, yes, I receive information, usually like from the crown chakra, and I may not always be able to identify just exact what. At least I used to go through that. People would say, "How did you know that?" And I'd say, "Oh, well, I don't really know. I just know. I understand where and how I connect now, but nevertheless, so those are my primary clairs, my primary ways of connecting and utilizing, if you will, the psychic gifts. Uh, and what was I going to say? Oh, and then so one of the things that's kind of interesting is that, and sometimes maybe people have experienced this. You may go for a reading of some sort, and maybe even a mediumship reading. And I experience this myself sometimes when I'm doing mediumship readings. I don't always hear like a name. If they're giving me a name, I may not always hear that. And that's because that clair for me is not that strong. And so it's all, it's all very, very interesting. Sometimes, like I was saying, so uh, sometimes some clairs are stronger than others, and yeah, and and for sure that's what you want to be able to develop. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think, another good thing to do, in addition to, what you talked about and finding community and you know, uh, is to consider, really honoring what's emerging and, uh, creating some stillness in your life so that you can, really, uh, allow what's emerging to create some space.
Mm-hmm.
And so meditation is a good way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, stilling that chatter that is constantly going on,
Mm-hmm.
within all of our minds, so that you create a space for your emerging psychic potential to come and start flowering.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it doesn't have to be any orthodox meditation practice or anything. The main thing is that you're just number one, recognizing that you're starting to experience some spiritual phenomena, and two, that you want to create space for it to show itself, basically. um, and I think it's really easy for us to kind of shove things to the side and tell ourselves, different stories about what's happening, kind of rationalize it away, and create busy things for us to do so we don't have to face the fact that, oh, something's really happening with me here. I'm starting to, have, visions or experiences or whatever is coming out. And I need to take a step back and let them, you know, have their place so that I can, understand them and myself better and how to create a partnership if that's the direction I'm going to go in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you're constantly filling up, your space and time and energy with different things, you're not gonna really hear that voice. It's gonna have a hard time coming through.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do develop a practice, if you are going to go on and do psychic work, you're going to need to be able to create that stillness and intentionality behind it, um, for yourself and also for your clients. So, it's a good thing to start with in the beginning, just to
Mm-hmm.
things
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
Hmm.
So some of the other things that I know that I like to do when I'm teaching people, working with people in real early stages, I like to talk about reaching we'll say elevated levels of consciousness. And so, yes, indeed, meditation is certainly one of those ways. And I might do some exercises with some guided meditation. And in the beginning, about working with like a mentor, community, but especially working with like a mentor. I can just speak for myself that when I'm working with someone, I'm listening, I'm paying attention, I'm trying to help filter, the information that they're sharing, and so that way I can help them say, yes, you know what, that really does sound like, a psychic. Experience. It really does sound like, a connection that you've made and what have you. So I'm filtering, I'm listening, and then what I want to do is help that person also find that way, that means of, sure, quieting their mind, strengthening what I call spiritual eyes, spiritual ears, as spiritual senses. And that might be, as I was saying, guided imagery, as well as I use a drum every once in a while, and a wide variety of different things like that. And it is a way to elevate one's consciousness and awareness. And this is all about that very slow, oftentimes slow process of being able to open up. And sometimes what I've seen is that people are very excited about doing the work, and yet also can, not always, but can from time to time become afraid. And it becomes necessary to talk about those fears so that you can
Hmm.
move through it and open up. And it's quite an interesting exploration, shall we say.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. When I decided the route that I wanted to go through was shamanism, you know, I enrolled in a year long um, shamanism apprenticeship. This was back in 1998, so a while ago,
Ah,
when I was but a young young lad. Um, and, we met monthly, sometimes more often, and worked on things. We had a really wonderful group. We had, uh, we had partners that we work with outside of the group called our shaman buddies. And our teacher led us through, different aspects of shamanism and, helped us build our skills. And we got towards the end of the course, and one of the processes we had to go through, um, we'd learned something called the shamanic journey, which is a real basic tool for connecting with our guides and spirit, and how we bring information back to people and community. Um, and we had to do a special kind of journey called a dismemberment journey,
Mhm.
where we went and visited one of our guides and saw them taking us apart in the spirit world. And then we were to come back to uh, this world while our spirit was dismembered, and just be dismembered for, period of a few weeks, actually.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that freaked me out, and I did not want to do it, to the point where, it came time to actually do it in class, and I couldn't do it. I got down, and it was weird because everything else I'd been like gung ho on,
Hmm.
and it seemed to happen, with relative ease. And I was so taken by the process, I actually, when there was just a solo introductory class that my teacher was offering during the middle of our apprenticeship to new students, I signed up and paid for three of my friends and my mom even to just take it, because I wanted them to, have the same experience I was having, which was, ecstatic. It was fantastic. It just made so much sense. So here I was, all the rest of the group was doing their dismemberment journey, and I was just like, nope, 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 can't make me, not going to do it, uh, freaking me out. And my teacher wasn't too happy with me, but I think she did the best she could to try to understand what was happening. Eventually, what ended up happening is, in between classes, my shaman buddy was really kind enough to come over and help me through the journey, separately on my own, well, with her guidance. And I was able to initiate it and then complete it. The completion is, you go back and remember yourself. You go back to the spirits, and they put you back together again. It's basically a take on a technique that's done in a lot of different cultures, where they, essentially, you spiritually die,
Yeah.
right? And then you're reborn and you come back. And since you've already, been in the land of the dead and you visited the dead, that's not something that you have to really deal with in the same way anymore, because you've already done it. And so now you can speak more clearly about
Hmm.
what it means to be alive and what it means to be dead, and the in between. you know so that was a really curious thing. But having that fear, I just remember, was really visceral. It was just like, I couldn't just block it out and try to go through the process, or wish it away, or do any one of another of other techniques I've learned throughout my life to just feel the fear and do it anyway. It was, really, really had a grip on me that it took me a while to deal with and process enough so that I could go through with it. So,
Yeah.
um, but I think that's an okay thing. What I eventually landed on was that I was really, mentally and emotionally invested in the process, so much so that it was really, when I reached a stumbling block, it was having this big effect on me. And I think that's, in the moment it may be difficult, and you may have to come up with, alternative processes to deal with whatever it is that's scaring you, or helps have somebody like I was lucky enough to have helped me face it and
Hmm.
process it enough, whatever it takes. Um, but it's also an indication that you're really seriously invested enough in your training, that it's having a really deep impact on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to get to a stumbling block like that and be afraid. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually, it's not really good or bad. It's just, it is what it is.
That's
And
right.
in the right hands, with somebody there who really is compassionate and caring, it can be an incredible learning and teaching experience, rather than something that, you may be tempted to view negatively, like, why can't I do this? Or what's, what's wrong with me? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which is a false premise.
Yeah. That's um it's it's a unique experience. Um I've had similar ones. Um and without a doubt, come come back to be so appreciative, come back with an understanding of what I saw, what I experienced, experienced, experienced grief, letting go of the physical self, letting go of the ego, and coming back and coming back and coming back. Very, very grateful for the experiences. Um, it is, it's very hard to put words to it, really. That's my experience anyhow. Um, I say unique. It's truly different for everyone. Um, I've done soul retrievals,
Mm-hmm.
and in that process, I've done soul retrievals for a couple of clients over the years. I have experienced a soul retrieval myself, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, just powerful. Just incredibly powerful. And again,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to come back, with a conscious um, memory of, or a conscious understanding, of what has taken place and the changes and the information and the knowledge. Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fantastic. Just fantastic stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
it really does require, at least in my opinion, a well experienced mentor, teacher to help you access all of that.
Yeah. 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 I think, there are cases of people who are kind of, self-taught, and that made their way through their emerging psychic abilities pretty much on their own. Um, but I think those are, few and far between.
Yeah.
And now at this point, with all the technology at our disposal, and the communities that have formed out there that you can connect with if you feel so inclined, there's no reason for you to go through this on your own, unless
Right.
that's something you want to do. I mean, I wouldn't discourage somebody from, that kind of thing, or self-study or whatever. But yeah, definitely connecting with somebody who's already broken trail for you, so you don't have to reinvent the
Yeah.
wheel, can really, help you get to a working level where you're comfortable with what your abilities are much sooner than if
Yeah.
you end up just trying to stumble through things on your own. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, but I mean, like I also know of people who've been, completely guided by spirit what to do and how to do it, and that worked out for them pretty well. And I wouldn't discount that process either. But I would say that the majority of people, that isn't really the path that they're going to follow. They will at some point need to reach
Hmm.
out to somebody else in
Hmm.
order to you know give what they're doing a name, or to help them you know fit it into some kind of working
Yeah.
uh, parameter.
That's why I think in the beginning it's just important to talk. It's just
Hmm.
important to talk to people
Hmm.
and find out that you know what, you're not crazy, you're not alone.
Hmm.
People have various sensitivities, and and you can develop it if you want to.
Hmm.
And there's really no wrong or right way to do it, you know.
Hmm.
So that's really what I know. I like to spend a fair amount of time in the beginning with somebody. It's just really like talking, like
Hmm.
who are you? Where are you? What's going on? What's been going on, type of thing.
Hmm.
And yeah. It's it's all really wonderful. It really is.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just watched a psychic documentary, actually, that came out in 2024, called "Look Into My Eyes."
Hmm.
Really worth checking out. Uh, it follows the story of a handful of different psychics in New York City, and what their practices are like, and some of their personal struggles, and their different pathways, because they're all really different people, and how they found their spiritual practice. They're all professional psychics, so that's really covered as well, and it's interesting. And the documentarian does a very neutral approach with them. Uh, you know, they're not pro psychic. They're not negating what they do. They just kind of let them tell their story, and it's very, very moving. And I really found connection with all the psychics. Like all of them had at least some aspect that was really very familiar. Watching them go through their process with their different clients, and their stories about their family relationship, and about how they became psychic practitioners. Very really fascinating.
Hmm.
And
But what was the name
yeah,
of it again?
yeah. So it's called "Look Into My Eyes."
Cool. And where did you find it? Was it on YouTube or Netflix?
Yeah, who produced it, kind of a thing. I think it's actually it's I don't is it a Netflix thing? I guess it's on Amazon
Ah.
in place, but I have access to a private video website, and so I found it on there. But I
Ah.
imagine you can find it in different subscription things
Yeah.
that you might look into. Um, yeah. So yeah, look into my eyes. Really interesting. I think this is a pretty good topic. We have much more that we haven't covered yet, so maybe we'll do a part two next week on how to become a psychic. So we've kind of barely scratched the surface. So, um, so we are getting close to the end of the show. So I think it'd be a good time for us to share contact information before we let everybody go. So Adrian, do you want to let people know what's happening for you tomorrow
Yeah,
and how they can be part of that, and then also how to get in touch with you after the show for
sure.
mediumship work or other that you do?
Yeah. Happy to do that. So my contact information, my phone number is area code 714-376-7289. I'll take your call or you can text me. Otherwise, check out my website. There's a lot of information there about my fees and services, and that is ravenmessages.com. And I do see people. I'm here in Southern California, in Irvine. I do see people in person. I also do Zoom and telephone calls, and might catch me at a variety of different holistic fairs as well. I've got one coming up tomorrow. It's on my website. And so that's, yeah, so that's it. And how about you, Lawrence?
Yeah, well, you can contact me in a variety of different ways. My phone number is 541 You can call me, you can text me. My email is givingtree@earthlink.net. And my website is givingtreefarm.com. I have a Facebook page, Giving Tree Farm Herb Company. Any of those ways are how to get in touch, reach out, and connect with me for some psychic work. I'm a shamanic practitioner. I'm also a certified clinical herbalist, and often those things all run together. So happy to be of service. So, so there you have it. Yeah. hmm Yeah, I think starting next month, June is the time to tune up and start adding other interesting voices to the conversation like we used to. So, knock on wood, I think we've mastered enough of the technical issues for the most part that we can start inviting other souls onto the channel here so we can hear their wonderful wisdom and all the stories they have to share about their practices and techniques, and hopefully do some readings and answer questions from our audience members as well. So definitely, definitely, yeah, yeah. I'm excited. I'm really glad things are going. Yeah, maybe we'll even convince Michael to come on the show as a guest. That could be good. Hopefully his ears are burning. All right. Well, thanks so much for being here and listening to us and putting up with our stories. And we'll have more next week. You remember we're here every Friday, Pacific Standard Time, 6 to 7 p.m. We're starting to get a collection of archive shows up, so you can go back and watch those. But tell a friend that we're here, and we love having new people show up, and having Adrienne along as the co-host is an amazing thing as well. So I'm really grateful for her wisdom and participation. Yeah, yeah. Well, until next week, we will see you. Take care. Be well. All right. Bye.